This video is going to cover configuring an ASA 5505 to pass authentication requests to a Radius server. The particular Radius server we're using is a Windows server that is running Internet Authentication Service. We will take a quick look at configuring Internet Authentication Service as well. And finally, we will touch a little bit on configuring the VPN client side so that it can connect to the ASA 5505 for remote access VPN. As you can see, we're starting off with running the VPN wizard for the ASA 5505. Most of this video will be working through the configuration in the Cisco ASDM for the 5505. So we are going to step through the VPN wizard. And we are selecting remote access and enabling inbound IPsec to the outside interface. The important thing to recall here is that we're setting a pre-shared key and a tunnel group name. These two items are going to be necessary when we get to configure the Cisco VPN client software. You'll need the group name and the pre-shared key, as well as the individual authentication information for the user. And this will be entered into here, and it will be entered into the client as well. I have a pre-shared key already created because this is an existing setup, so I'm entering the pre-shared key, and I'll enter the tunnel group name as well. We're not going to authenticate using the local database. We're going to pass authentication to a Radius server or Windows server running Internet Authentication Server. So we're going to authenticate using an AA server group, and the server group name is domain. Now, this was something I had already set up on the 5505, but we will touch on configuring it as well. As we start in, we need to have a DHCP pool for the ASA 5505 to assign addresses to clients. I selected a range of addresses not part of the existing DHCP range and not something that has been statically assigned to other devices. We'll give this pool a name, and of course, being inside the network, our subnet mask is going to be a Class C mask. The DNS server and secondary DNS server are the domain controller and the ISP provider. Well, that is not technically the standard recommended technical configuration for a Microsoft domain. That is what this client uses. So here we have the summary. The rest of the information was merely a click-through. And we're now going to take a look at the configuration for the AA server group domain. So this is the group configuration information. And there's nothing to change or consider there, but then we're going to look at the configuration for the particular Radius server involved. Okay, the pieces of information here that are significant to us are the server secret key and the server IP address or server name. Of course, the authentication ports are standard, and they're only accessible from inside the network. So we are going to set the server secret key on this side and on the side of the Radius server. So we are going to connect to the server via remote desktop. We're going to run the Internet Authentication Service administration tool. I'm going to take a look at the Radius client's configuration. And there's already a Radius client configured here. This is for the old router unit. We'll take a quick look at the properties there. Now, I considered renaming it and reconfiguring it for the new device, but I dislike having to try and recreate configuration if I had to step backwards. So I chose to create a new configuration. And I set a new shared secret. Which I had copied from my notes so that I would not have to type it in. Now, the one thing I did note is now both devices have the same address, and I wasn't sure how that would work. So I switched the original device to a new address. The original device actually isn't online, so I wasn't too particularly worried about that. That's just so that I can recover the config if I needed it. Now we go and we restart the Internet Authentication Service so that it picks up the new config. I'm not entirely certain that that's necessary, but I always find it's a safe step. Okay, now that we are back here, I paste the new server secret key in, and I go to test. And as I frequently do, I have forgotten to actually apply the new configuration. I use my credentials. And it fails. At this time I suspected that it might be working through LogMeIn. My copy and paste from my notes on my local machine did not successfully paste to the host for LogMeIn, so I go back to typing it in manually. And of course I also have to log back into the server and do that as well. And then we come back to the test, and here's probably my error. I should have set it to authentication instead of authorization. Again, I enter my credentials, and we hit OK on the test. And we find that we did authenticate successfully to the Radius server, or Internet Authentication Server running on Windows Server. Now I'm going to save that configuration to the ASA 5505, and we're done the configuration for the ASA 5505 to connect to the Internet Authentication Server, and we're done the configuration on the Internet Authentication Server to allow it to talk to the ASA 5505. And we're set up for VPN client access. The one step we have not done is we will create and configure a client profile on the client side. and that will allow us to complete. We are going to create a connection profile for our new connection. So I've opened the VPN client window. So we're going to go to connection entries, select new. Then our new connection entry requires a name, so we will create a name for that. And after we have our name, we have to enter a description if we want it. And we also have to enter the IP address of the public endpoint of our ASA 5505. So we will enter that in here. Now we get to the group authentication part. This is the tunnel group name and the shared secret key that we created earlier in the ASA 5505 configuration. So we will enter both of those here. And when entering a secret passphrase, it's always good if you don't make a typo error and have fumble fingers. Now this and your login credentials are really all you need to create your endpoint. So now we will try and connect to the ASA 5505. And it appears we have successfully authenticated, and we are connected. So now we will open the window back up, and indeed we're connected, so now we will disconnect. And now we have done an end-to-end test. We're complete.